It is convincing that there are multiple Prince Andrei Bolkonsky, and they will be referred to as Prince Andrei, Prince, or Andrei interchangeably, regardless of who he means in the same paragraph.
Yes. Enjoy.
Speaking of princes and conversations, let's start with a dear, dear friend of ours. Well, depends on your perspective. Prince Vasily in Petersburg is attending Anna Pavlovna, who is the maid of honor to the Empress, slightly before her soiree at St. Petersburg. And they're there to kind of have a conversation. Vasily is going over an appointment that he's unhappy with regarding his son and is trying to figure out a way to maneuver him into a different position, something a little bit higher up, maybe even an aide-de-camp to an important general who is, as we're getting ready to go, the Russian army is getting ready to go fight Napoleon along with other European powers. And so that kind of goes back and forth. They go over some of the gossip in the town, which continues until the soiree itself. And then we start to see the dynamics of the various peoples here. First of all, speaking of Prince Bolkonsky, Prince Andrei Bolkonsky enters the room, and he enters in a way that just shows he does not care about this at all. He is over it already. He already knows everyone. He knows the conversation going on, and he's profoundly bored to be here. And he's accompanied by his wife, who is very pregnant, very pretty. And every time she's mentioned, Tolstoy keeps bringing up her mustache. I don't know what to read into that. He just keeps doing it.
Oh, we're gonna talk so much about it. Oh, and her lips. Oh, that little squirrel-like face. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
I don't know if this is the translation I'm reading, but every time someone's lips go, I think it's Prince Bolkonsky's lips are described as sensuous, and there's a lot to say here. At the same time, as this is happening, more people are coming in. We have the son of Count Bezukhov, who's known primarily as Pierre, who comes in. As we learn about Pierre, he was mostly educated abroad. He has just come back to Russia relatively recently. His father lives in Moscow, and he's been dispatched to St. Petersburg to find a job. He has not done very well at that so far. Yeah, you see why, because he's walking around, and he's intelligent. He wants to get involved in every conversation. He's worried that maybe something is really interesting going on that he's going to miss. But he gets involved, and there's a certain way you have a conversation. Because these aren't real conversations, so to speak. This is a sort of a formal dance before the actual dance, where you say a few things, say a few platitudes, and then you know the right time to move on. You aren't actually having a conversation unless you're kind of agreeing with each other, then you can go a little longer. You are certainly not there to actually argue a point. Now, this becomes trouble because, oh boy, does Pierre actually want to argue some points. So he goes to some relatively important people in Petersburg society, and he brings them into some arguments. And so Anna Pavlovna is following Pierre around, trying to make sure he doesn't really get anyone too angry, although she's not doing very well because Pierre is just going for it. Andrei tags along as well. Andrei is a friend of Pierre's, we should know. And he's not defending Pierre exactly, but he'll kind of get Pierre out of some sticky conversational traps, especially as they start talking about philosophy and Russia's place in the world. And that continues. Prince Vasily, he has to go eventually. He's accompanied by his daughter, Helene. He has to unfortunately leave to go to another soiree or another event that night. And on his way out, he's accosted by a former society woman who is now kind of fallen on hard times, Princess Trubetskoy. She says, hey, look, the position you have now, you got that because of my father. Can you please remember that and help my son find a position in the guards? Our family's fallen on hard times. I'm currently pursuing a lawsuit. I have no money, and he has no future. And at first, Prince Vasily is just like, come on, go away, please. I have some more business to attend to. But as she keeps going on, perhaps realizing that she's not going to go away, perhaps feeling that he really does owe her father a debt of honor for what he did for Prince Vasily, he says, okay, look, yes, I will go talk to my contacts, and we'll see, get word to the emperor and see if we can find a position for your son in the guards. And she says, oh, wonderful. Well, if you find a position in the guards, could you actually help him become an aide-de-camp to, one of the Russian generals? And he says, look, no, that position has already been chosen. I'm not going to be able to override that, especially not for an unknown like your son. And she kind of keeps going along with it, and he eventually has to leave as she's literally trailing along beside him, saying, no, you can really make him, an aide. And she basically follows him all the way until he leaves, and then she goes back to, as it's described, talk with people until there's an appropriate time for her to go because she's already accomplished her mission. From there, we follow Pierre as he goes to Prince Andrei, to his residence, and then they have a conversation about life. While they're there, Andrei's wife, Lisa, she's getting on Andrei because Andrei has recently joined the military and he's fairly soon going to deploy. And she is not happy about that.
Well, Andrei's not particularly nice about it either.
Yeah, she's really not happy about it. Very understandably, Andrei is just totally dead to her concern in that regard.
She's also pregnant, and Andrei's response is more or less, women.
So yeah, he basically sends her out of the room, and he sits down with Pierre, and he says, look, Pierre, you're single. stay that way. Don't ever get married if you want to be happy, essentially. And he's like, my bum, I've already cast my die. And he says, life here, with a wife, all I do is attend these soirees and balls and social life, and I'm so very bored. And as they're having that conversation, Pierre doesn't really understand, because to him, Andre has everything that he wants to be. He's married, he's got a position in society, he's got a job, and he's going off to seek glory, although Pierre himself is a bit of a sympathizer for Napoleon, who is the Russian military is going to oppose. And so they have that conversation. Andre sends him away and says, hey, look, whatever you do, don't go to Prince Karagin's tonight. It's just going to be trouble. Please don't play cards there. And Pierre walks away and says, yeah, I'm going to listen to my friend Andre. Then he says, well, really, I gave my word to Karagin that I would be there to play cards. And then I also gave my word to Andre so that I wouldn't. So, I'm going to break someone's word. So I may as well just have fun while I'm doing it. I'm going to break my word to someone. And he goes to Karagin to play cards. And I don't know how important this character is going to be, but while he's there, a man named Alkhav challenges an Englishman, says, I bet I can drink an entire bottle of rum while sitting on this windowsill with my legs outside the windowsill without touching either the sides or ever taking the bottle from my lips. That's like the worst bet in the world, first of all. And everyone acknowledges that they're all pretty certain he's going to die. But he does it and he wins. And Pierre tries to do the same before they say, no, that's too dangerous. Anyway, let's go take this bear we have chained up and go play with it in the park, which of course is fine. Jumping forward to the Count and Countess Rostov's residence in Moscow. This is some time forward, and it's the name day for the Countess as well as their youngest daughter, Natasha. Both of them are named Natasha. They're getting ready for a celebration, and the Count and the Countess are having a conversation. Our favorite Princess Turetskoy comes by to tell the Countess about what a horrible state she's in for departing to go and treat herself to Count Bezukhov to try to leverage some of their history together. So from there, we have some of the, I won't say I have the honor. These are important characters, however, a little bit awkward. A few characters come in. We have Boris, who is Anna Mikhailovna's son, who, of course, is now in the guards. We have Nikolai, who is Count's son, formerly a student, now joining the military. Not because his friend Boris is joining the military, just because he wants to, totally on his own.
I just need to make that clear. It's because I love my country and duty, but definitely not because of Boris.
Yeah, definitely not because my best friend is going. Along with them, they have Natasha, who is the youngest daughter, who is also sharing a name day. Sonia, who is their cousin, as well as Petya, the youngest son. They have a conversation and things continue. They go off and have their own fun. The important thing to note here is that Sonia and Nikolai are in love. They are also cousins, and as they leave, I think Anna Mikhailovna is still there at this time. So as she watches them go, she says to the Countess, cousinhood is a dangerous neighbor.
It's just an Arrested Development episode writing itself. It's great. Which obviously we all know Arrested Development came first, and then Tolstoy's War and Peace was written after.
Right. Upon arriving at the Count's, it's really obvious that Boris does not like what his mom is doing. She keeps saying, look, just play your part. It'll be fine. We'll get the money. And Boris is just kind of stone-facedly looking forward, like he doesn't really like this. He doesn't appreciate it, but he's more or less going along with it. As they get inside, Princess Trubetskoy once again sees Prince Vasily and says, oh, Prince Vasily, perfect. You can help me out here. And it's noted that Vasily kind of has realized, oh, I can't get rid of this woman. And he just kind of gives in and goes to see if he can help her out or figure something out for her, while also trying to kind of keep her away from the Count, because the Count is, it should be noted, very sick at this point. He's very close to death. And she's like, no, we'll work something out. And says, oh, Boris, you see the Rostovs wanted Pierre to come to dinner tonight. Why don't you go see if you can go eat him? I'll talk to Prince Vasily about this. And Prince Vasily slumps into an armchair, realizing that he's truly not going to get rid of Anna Mikhailovna. Boris goes to go find Pierre. Pierre is in his room, imagining that he is having an argument with Napoleon. And Boris barges in and introduces himself and basically lays out, hey, look, I know you kind of understand what my mom is doing here. I don't want any part of that. Just to be clear, I don't want your money or anything. That's just full honesty. I don't want to be part of this. I'm uncomfortable with it. Also, the Rostovs would like to see you for dinner tonight. Pierre, who does not know how to receive this, just feels awkward and sends him away, but is like, oh, I kind of like him. He's an honest, smart young man. From here, we follow Pierre through a bit of his day as he goes through the various princesses who live in the house, and they'll make fun of him. There's one of them who can't stop laughing at him every time she sees him, and he's just wandering around, not certain what he's doing at any given time. From there, we go back to the Rostovs. The Countess has managed to get some money for Anna Mikhailovna because she feels so bad for her friend. And from there, we go back to another dinner party. A lot of dinner parties. From here, we have conversation between their many friends, an argument about politics from a man named Shinshin and Lieutenant Berg, who a lot going on there. I think the most important thing to note is that throughout this party, Nikolai mostly is talking to a young woman named Julie. We'll talk more about her later. But Sonia, not happy, but as soon as the dinner's over, she runs out of the room. Natasha has to go calm her down before to bring her back to the after-dinner party. Sonia is like, my life is so difficult. I love him, but we're cousins, so we'd have to get the approval of the Metropolitan, the head of the church. And Natasha, who's very helpful, says, look, Shinshin, a relation of his, married his first cousin. That got approved. You and Nikolai, only second cousins, so it's basically a shoo-in. Going back a little bit, before all this is happening, well, while Sonia's getting upset about it, Pierre attends the party, characteristically doesn't know what to do. He just doesn't even know who to talk to. And another woman, Maria Dmitrievna, who is known as the Dragon because of her frankness, kind of like Pierre in a way, except everybody respects her for it instead of looking down on him for it.
Kind of like Pierre in a way, but actually not at all like Pierre.
But in the opposite way. She comes in and basically shames him for the incident with the bear. They proceed to the dinner. Pierre, once again, is like not doing super well conversationally. He's very awkward. The men are discussing war. The women be like, well, why do we need to have these conversations, these wars, whatever? But that's when they break to go play cards and play music and all that. That's when Sonia runs out. We return. They all get to have some fun. They do some dancing. All is well. So while the name day celebration is happening, Count Bezukhov, who's Pierre's father, he begins to go into basically a spiral. They know he's going to die soon. So everyone, Prince Vasily, all the princesses into the house, they get ready for his passing, getting a priest to perform last rites and all that. And they send for Pierre to come say goodbye to his father. Accompanying Pierre as he shows up as Anna Mikhailovna. As they're coming in, Vasily pulls aside the eldest princess and sits her down and says, look, you know I love you like you're one of my own children. And you know that Count Bezukhov wrote in his will that everything he has is going to Pierre, and we can't let that stand. And after some argument, he gets her to agree over her hatred of Anna Mikhailovna that they need to rewrite his will so Pierre doesn't get everything. Anna Mikhailovna is trying to ingratiate herself to Pierre, so she brings him inside. He's tripping over himself. He's in a part of the house he didn't even know existed. He's been living here for months, and everyone's giving him deference, which is totally weird to him because normally no one does that. And they bring him up, and he arrives just in time for sort of a last rites. Everyone's treating him weirdly. They go through the whole process of that. And as they're watching it, Pierre notices that Prince Vasily and the eldest princess go off to his private chambers by themselves. And he's like, well, that must be part of the ritual. And he assumes everything going on is meant to be happening.
Not realizing that he's just about to be cut out of the will.
Yeah. They bring him back. Pierre has a moment of quiet with him, but it really is not much of a conversation at all. And then he goes out and Prince Vasily starts having a conversation with them. The princess and Anna Mikhailovna get in a physical altercation. Anna Mikhailovna realizing what's happening with the documents that the princess has. And they like literally trying to rip it out of her hands when the youngest princess runs in and says, hey, the count's dying. And, he passes in the next few pages. When Anna Mikhailovna tells the story later on, she says, oh yeah, the count and his son, Pierre, great relationship at the end. They had a great conversation at the end, which of course we know did not happen. They just kind of stared at each other and then Count went to sleep. Basically, the plan of the eldest princess and Prince Vasily did not go through, and Pierre becomes Count Bezukhov. From here, we go again to another family, to the Balkanskys, to Prince Balkansky. Don't get Prince Balkansky confused with Prince Balkansky, because there is the elder Prince Balkansky, and we have been so far been following the younger Andrei Balkansky. He's the one who's married to Lisa. He lives out in a country estate. He's mostly been retired, somewhat forcibly, and now he just kind of spends all his time just working with his hands and trying to teach his daughter. They're really just kind of like beating her down with knowledge. From there, the younger Prince Andrei Balkansky comes with his wife Lisa. She and Maria, Prince Balkansky's daughter, get along very well. It's really the only thing holding Lisa together because she's so upset now because as Andrei reveals to Maria, Lisa's had bad premonitions about the baby's birth. They have a dinner, many more dinners, where they have a lot of conversation about what everyone's going to do, as well as, Andrei's service in Europe, which the elder Balkansky does not seem to get at all, and he makes fun of him, and he seems to have the opinion that all these new young people are just young upstarts, and, they're not really anything compared to the old Suvorovs, this Napoleon, and he says the only reason Napoleon is so big as he is because he fought the Germans first, and everyone since the beginning of time has beaten the Germans. The only time they ever win is when they're fighting themselves. It's apparent that he does not really respect that, but, whatever. Prince Andrei prepares to depart. Maria gets a letter from Julie, who is sort of the person who's kind of pining after Nikolai, and they have a conversation. We find out that Maria is very religious, and they talk about what went on in Moscow. So Andrei prepares to leave. Lisa is not happy about it. Andre goes to father and say, hey, look, get a midwife when she's giving birth. She's had bad premonitions. If I happen to die, raise the son. If it's a son, raise him here. Does not mention what she should do if it's a daughter. And you can start to see where some of these tendencies came from when the elder Prince Balkonsky says, look, I know you're unhappy. That's just how it is. That's just how marriage is. You just suck it up and go through it. And then he tells him, look, if you die, I will be sad. But if you don't act like my son, I will be far more ashamed. And with that, those very encouraging words from a very supportive father, Prince Andre leaves for the theater of war as Lisa faints. And then Andre says, well, what am I going to do? Wait until she wakes up and leaves while she's unconscious. And while she's unconscious, the elder Prince Balkonsky looks at her like he's disgusted and leaves the room. And that's where we end part 1.